All distillery starts out with hygiene and quality. How they prepare their grains, their yeast strains, that's the science. And then after that, how you mature it, how you bottle it, how you filter it, you can multi-brand. Literally, when we go around, we're going to let you see the guys who really make it. I hope your audience speaks Kentuckyese.
The products and the process for making the whiskey is the same way it was in the 17 and 1800s.
It's grain, water, yeast beer that you distill and put into a barrel. The only thing you can do is filter it and add water. So, you know, there's a strict set of limitations that you have to adhere to.
So really the only thing that's changed around here are some of the techniques and some of the technologies, but the process is still the same.
Bourbon is a product of the United States, made anywhere in the U.S. We have 5 important things that we need to follow to be able to call it bourbon. First thing, has to be made from at least 51% corn, aged in a new charred oak container, can't be distilled any higher than 160 proof, can't go into that container any higher than 125 proof, and we can't add any colorings or flavorings. Now, one of the reasons we make so much bourbon here in Kentucky is because of our water. This part of the state sits on a limestone bed, and our water filters through that limestone. This does 2 main things. First thing, that water is picking up calcium, which gives us a nice sweet flavor, but also that limestone removes iron. Iron is terrible for making whiskey. It makes a really bitter, off-tasting whiskey. So you have to start with a quality water source if you're gonna have a quality bourbon.
When grain trucks come in here, we probe that grain truck 4 times. We probe it twice in the back, twice in the front. And I'm looking for mold, bacteria, cobs, whatever in it. And that is very important because if you bring mold all in, you don't bring your bourbon.
At the very top where those pipes are coming in, that's where we take the corn and clean it. Because this will give you bad bourbon. So the grain cleaner is going to clean out everything that we don't want that's coming off that truck.
Once it's been inspected, it will get offloaded into the bins outside. We use a hammer mill to crush the grain into a mill. You know, corn, the starch is all inside the kernel. So you have to break the kernel to get to the starch, which is what we're after.
We're then gonna mix that with our limestone water in our cooker.
So what we just heard was the start of a cook. We are boiling our limestone water. We'll start with corn, then with rye, and then with malted barley in sequence. And that will give us our mash.
All right, folks, we're gonna talk about fermentation next. Now, yeast is gonna be the main actor in fermentation. Now we have these starchy grains, we get the sugars out of those through the mashing process. Yeast is gonna consume those sugars, produce heat, CO2, and alcohol.
These 2 fermenters give you just one of the best descriptions of what happens. This is brand new. So it's brand new, filled up. There's no fermentation going in this one. It's where the yeast is saying, well, did you feed me well or not? Look at here. This is when the yeast says, thank you. Taste this. Is that about the best sourdough bread you've ever had? This one has been here for 3 days. So if you feel on here, there's a grain cap, and that sort of locks in things. But if you break through the grain cap and taste the beer, that's the finished product.
From the fermenter, we're going to move into the source of flavor, is how we distill.
So after 3 days in those fermenters, we're gonna bring the beer over to this column. Inside there are perforated plates. That beer is gonna be piped into the top, and it's gonna drip down, wash down over those plates.
Put your hand on top of that. Now if that hand, if you imagine, was a scouring pad made of copper, we boil it the second time and it has to go through your hand or that copper. It will pick up a lot of impurities.
Alcohol, of course, has a lower boiling point. So if we get that temperature just right, that alcohol, it's gonna vaporize, rise to the top, while that spent mash and water continues down. Now the alcohol vapor rising off the top, we're gonna collect it, condense it, it'll end up in the first tail box. At this point we call it low wine.
And you notice how grungy it is. That is the copper sulfate from the malt and corn oil.
So we'll pull a little sample off here. Well, that's what it smells like when it first comes off the still. It's quite different than what we collect and what we put in the barrel.
So we're going to take that low wine. We're going to send it over to our second still. It is a pot still, what we call a doubler. We're going to gently redistill that low wine. Strip away some more impurities, a bit of water, collect those good alcohol vapors, condense them once more. They're going to wind up in the second tail box, this time as high wine.
So, the spirit ends up in the gauge tank. There we will add limestone water that at this point has been filtered. Every bourbon distillery distills over 125 proof. Every bourbon distillery adds water to its spirit going into the barrel. And the most expensive component of a bourbon is the barrel.
Average cost of a newly charred white oak barrel in today's environment is about $150 a barrel. This year alone, we're going through 100,000 barrels. And it will be 3 to 23 years before you can even resell the barrel to do anything else with it. So imagine the investment that they have in the future when they're doing this every year for the next 20 years.
As that clear whiskey is sitting in the barrel, in the warehouse, exposed to seasonal changes, it's going to be breathing, expanding and contracting in and out of the wood.
Because Mother Nature has a lot to do with the movement of the whiskey in and out of the wood, and it's not temperature, it's barometric pressure. When the whiskey warms up inside the barrel, the molecules expand, just like a 2-liter soda bottle when it gets hot. The pressure is so great inside that barrel, it pushes the whiskey out into the grain of the wood through the char. And when it does that, because the water molecules are smaller than the alcohol molecules, it actually pushes some of the water out through the grain of the wood.
Meaning our volume drops. And as we heat and cool, the barrel is also pulling in the air of the warehouse.
So what's actually going on inside the barrel is the alcohol molecules are trapped in the wood and it breaks down the saps and rosins. And so when the whiskey travels back the other way, when it cools down or when the pressure changes, it pulls those flavors from the sap and the rosin and the color from the char back into the heart of the barrel. I tell people to think of the barrel like a tea bag. All right? So you use that barrel one time for bourbon. You try to use it again to make the same product, just like a cup of tea. The color and the taste is not the same. It's going to be diluted.
After 6 or 7 years, we'll have lost 50% of its original contents.
And the longer you leave it after that, the less you're going to have. Sometimes you open up the barrels, they're empty. Heartbreak City.
But what's left is a very rich, flavorful product. There's not a single barrel in here that tastes like another barrel.
This barrel was filled the same time this one was, and they're put right next to each other and they taste completely different.
These quadrants are set up, and depending upon where I place the barrel in this warehouse, and on which side of the warehouse, and on which level, I can extract different chemical flavors from the white oak itself.
We batch 130 barrels together to make a consistent flavor profile.
And you're taking things that are overstated and things that are understated, and you can balance them and make them better together. That's why we do it. And I don't care what distillery you go to, everybody has to do it that way, especially for a uniform profile.
Isn't life a journey?